My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life. Welcome to the Duck Milk Prod YouTube channel. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and this live stream is part of a series I am calling Reading Reviews with Rebecca, because I like alliterations, which will analyze the critical reception of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice through the negative reviews written by top critics from Rotten Tomatoes, one review at a time. This is not meant to belittle anyone's opinions, but rather serve as a study of art criticism and how we discuss film. I'm hoping that this endeavor and this long-standing project of mine will encourage us all, including myself, to be better consumers of cinema. This week, I'll be reading through a review from NJ.com titled Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Review, Not So Super, written by Stephen Whitty. Stephen's bio on the site reads, quote, "I've been writing forever and about movies and entertainment for more than 30 years. Have a BFA from NYU Film School and a lot of nice awards, but my proudest moment was having a Guinness with Peter O'Toole. No butter on the popcorn, please, and I like to sit up close," unquote. Hey, that's pretty cool, Stephen. Peter O'Toole, great actor among many, classic film actors that have continue to stand the test of time in their films. So that's a pretty cool thing. But I would not sit up close in a movie theater. That is not my preferred seating arrangement. So I would disagree with you on that choice. I like to sit in the back, up high as much as possible for that sweet spot. So I one time, just as a side note, I went to see Jurassic Park 3. And the only seating available when I got there was like the front row. Boy, was that a terrible experience. Let me tell you, I did not enjoy that. So Jurassic Park 3, maybe I need to revisit it. I haven't really watched it in a long time. Maybe it's because of that terrible experience. But yeah, that was not the best. So ever since then, I make sure I sit as far away from the screen as possible. It's probably also because my eyesight is really bad, and sitting up close to a screen has probably contributed to that. So I'm gonna have to disagree on the seating arrangement choice from Stephen, but I guess however you enjoy films is your choice. So you can click on the link in the video description below to read Stephen's review and follow along with me as I read it on the live stream. So I encourage you to read it for yourself, just so you know I'm not making anything up, because I'm not trying to. I'm trying to read these reviews. So if Stephen should ever see this video, I just want to say that I'm aiming to do this as civilly and analytically as possible. And I would ask that anyone watching live or posting in the comments would do the same. I'm simply just taking a look at the criticism for and of BVS now from an historical point of view, given that these reviews were used by Warner Brothers in their decision making process regarding the DC Extended Universe. Due to the poor reviews for Batman v Superman, the tone and approach to the franchise were changed for Justice League and ultimately destroyed what Zack Snyder was going to do with his 5-film arc. So we didn't get that because of these reviews. Before I get into Steven's thoughts, though, I'm sure there's some viewers out there who might think, well, this is a film critic for a major news outlet who's been writing about films for 30 years. And he's also on Rotten Tomatoes. He's a top critic. Who cares what you have to say, Rebecca? And you know what? I think that's a fair question. I would be asking it myself if I were not the person doing this. So just to give you a little background on me, I have a little bit of a video that kind of shares the things that I can bring to the table. I graduated from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, with a degree in telecommunications and film and a focus on broadcast television production. While I've never been to film school, in my television and production experience, I've learned about and have lots of practice in operating cameras, shot composition, and editing. Lighting, green screen, and audio are my weak spots, admittedly, but I've been working on those. After working in local TV news, running cameras, and working in production, I got a job at Turner, now Warner Media, or whatever they're calling themselves now, for 14 years. I worked with networks, or brands as they call them now, like TBS, TNT, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, Boomerang, True TV, and Turner Classic Movies as a video encoding specialist. I also did a fair amount of closed captioning work and DVD and Blu-ray QC. In case you are wondering how I podcasted about Supergirl and the DCEU films while working for a Time Warner company, I actually got permission and clearance from my human resources representative. If you think I wouldn't criticize stories that were under the same corporate umbrella, that was never a problem nor a concern for me. If I thought the Supergirl TV series or a DCEU film had faults, I said so. In the last 17 years, I have served as a director, technical director, and camera operator at my local church in a live production capacity. I've been a video editor for 17 years, having worked in Avid, Final Cut, and Premiere Pro CC. In my day job, I shoot and edit news and documentary-style video content that involves interviews and narrative storytelling. I'm also currently an amateur photographer and am aiming to improve my efforts in still photography. You can check out my work over at Instagram at @TheDerbyKid. Link is in the video description below. While discussing these film reviews, music and film scores will inevitably come up. It may be good to know that in my life, I have played piano, handbells, clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, acoustic guitar, and have even started learning how to play the ukulele. I've played in marching bands, symphonic bands, and wind ensembles, and have sung in many choirs. While I don't consider myself a world-class musician, far from it, actually, I do know some things about music and am a big fan of film scores and soundtracks. In addition to my production and musical experience, I have had lots of experience in art criticism. I've been podcasting about television and film since 2009 and do so on a regular basis with Supergirl Radio, a podcast I co-host about the CW Supergirl TV series. I am also a writing contributor to the Justice League Universe podcast that offers analysis on the DCEU films. You might even hear my voice occasionally in recordings and audio commentaries over there. I'm not an expert, but I care deeply about film, television, storytelling, and art. So I hope this gives you a background on where I'm coming from. If anyone cares, I've gotten back into my ukulele practice. I've been using Sunday afternoons to practice my ukulele, so I'm trying to get better at that. If anyone is interested, I think the Kala app for ukulele is fantastic. It gives you the chance to play along with some of your favorite songs and teaches you how to play them, which I enjoy immensely. And I'm having trouble with my green screen. I don't know why. Well, I do know why I had to relight my background. So I think that's at least a little less annoying for the viewer. But yeah, so ukulele is coming along. I'm maybe sometime in the future going to possibly buy a soprano ukulele. I have 2 concerts right now, and I recently bought a baritone ukulele from a friend of mine for $50. I thought that was a pretty good deal. So the big surprise, this does not mean, connected to the Batman v Superman review at all, but I was surprised that the baritone ukulele had different chords than the ukulele, the concert ukulele. I thought they would be the same. So I'm having to learn new new chord fingerings for the baritone ukulele. So that stakes. Thought I'd be able to hop right onto the baritone. So anyway, that's my progress on the ukulele if anyone is interested. But I'm gonna get to the thing that we're gathered together to look at, which is Stephen Whitty's review from NJ.com. All right, so I like to start with the title because that's the first thing we see, and that's the thing that usually gets put out there in tweets and Facebook posts and things like that. So it's pretty important. So this title for this review says Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice review, not so super. And then I think there's a little subheading underneath it that says, quote, Ben Affleck's Batman, Henry Cavill's Superman, and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman are a disappointing trio in the latest comic book blockbuster, unquote. So just to start off, I find this title pretty boring and lazy. There's not a lot of effort that's being put into being creative here. In my opinion, if you're going to write a negative review about a film that you think is bad and want to convince the reader that it's bad, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a really nitpicky person, but put a little more effort into it. Try a little harder to be creative. If you want to be better than the film that you are critiquing, maybe try harder. Not so super is pretty lame. I'm just gonna be honest. So I really wish that had been a little more creative. To be fair to Stephen, sometimes these things I think are written by the editor. So Stephen may or may not have been able to contribute to the title, but I do think that it is pretty lazy. Though there is a teaser in this that I'm interested in learning more about. I'm looking forward to learning why Stephen thinks that the DC Trinity was disappointing in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. I actually thought it was pretty awesome that the way they were brought together. So I'm curious as to why Stephen did not think that they were brought together very well. Okay, so getting into the body of the review, Stephen writes, quote, more like the dark light. Zack Snyder's second Superman movie brings on Batman, introduces Wonder Woman, gives us a quick peek at Aquaman, and works hard to set up DC's own multi-hero franchise, the Justice League of America. But it's all a little tired, slow, and confused, as these Depression-era superheroes were finally showing their real age, unquote. I think the use of the dark light here from Stephen is a play on words for, of course, the Dark Knight, because he believes, according to the definition of light, L-I-T-E, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is, quote, diminished or lacking in substance or seriousness, unquote. So, given that definition from my old friend Merriam-Webster dictionary, I would disagree with the use of light here. BVS doesn't lack in substance, and it certainly doesn't lack in seriousness. So, I don't know how Stephen justifies using it here. I think Stephen just wanted to have a pun intended witty response to the film, and that was the best effort for a pun on the Dark Knight that he could come up with. And I also, like, I understand that the running time of Batman v Superman was long. Some people just can't handle a 2.5-hour film. Oh my gosh, it's so long. Some people couldn't deal with it. So I understand that critique. I can grant you maybe the use of tired or slow, but confused? Why is Dawn of Justice confused about itself? That's what it seems like Stephen is writing here, that the film is tired, slow, and confused. So why is the film confused? How is it confused about itself? I would argue that the film knows exactly what it is and what exactly the story it's trying to tell. So maybe Stephen was confused, but I don't think the film itself was confused. I think there's a solid through line in the film, and the film knows what it is. It's not trying to be something else. It just is what it is, whether you like it or not. But I don't think it's confused about what it's trying to be. Okay, continuing on. Stephen writes, quote, the new film briefly reprises the end of 2013 Superman reboot, Man of Steel, to show us an eyewitness we hadn't noticed, Bruce Wayne, who arrives in Metropolis just in time to see the Wayne Enterprises skyscraper knocked down. Yeah, that confused me too. Maybe Metropolis offered a sweet tax rebate if he'd moved his corporate headquarters, unquote. So maybe this is what Steven is talking about in terms of confusing. But it's so interesting to me that this is a big critique from these film critics, if you want to call them that. This is a real sticking point to people. How could Bruce Wayne have a company building in Metropolis? What is that about? Oh my gosh, I'm so confused. Shouldn't he be in Gotham City? He's at least a billionaire. He runs a company. The company is probably going to have other buildings in other cities, especially a sister city that's just across the waterway, or you take a ferry and you get to this other city. Why wouldn't they have a location in the other city and operate out of that city as well? Why is that so confusing? I don't understand why this is such a big sticking point to a lot of these reviewers. They seem to have a hard time understanding that a very rich man who runs and owns a company would put a location in another city that just happens to be right across the river. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I don't think that's confusing. I think that makes perfect sense when you're talking about a businessman. So maybe that's just me. I'm going to stop right here and just hop into the live chat because Dennis has joined me. I hope you're doing well, Dennis. Thank you for hopping in here and sharing your thoughts. Dennis says lack of effort just sums up the movie critical landscape. I want to believe in the best of people, but some of these these critical reviews of BBS have really, boy, it's disappointing. It really is disappointing to read these things because I have a high standard of what I think like a film analysis should be, or at least a review, like a real genuine effort at looking at film and trying to understand it. I have a high bar on that probably, but it's just, boy, it just seems like they wrote a first draft and then just went with it. Nobody seemed to give any thought to anything. And then Dennis also says Wayne Enterprises is at least the second largest company in the setting of the DC universe. Of course, they're going to have multiple headquarters, especially in an economic juggernaut like Metropolis. Yes, I totally agree. And I think that's another reason to compare and contrast. Really, it does. BBS does a good job of both comparing and contrasting Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne in the film. And so, if you're gonna pit Bruce Wayne up against Lex Luthor, they're both business tycoons, and they would both have a lot at stake in the economic business world. I also want to make sure that we are using. I meant to look this up before, because I don't think in BVS is it technically Wayne Enterprises? Because I think the Wayne Foundation was the sign that was in the rubble. If I have that correct, the DCEU wiki says the Wayne Foundation is the charity arm of Wayne Enterprises, based in Gotham City. So there is that. Trying to see if there's any other information there. So I guess it's technically correct to say Wayne Enterprises. And yeah, Dennis corrects me as well. So it's probably Wayne Financial that was the actual building. So I just wanted to correct the record on that because sometimes people throw out these, and I'll put your corrected spelling up there, Dennis, on the screen. But yeah, so I just wanted to correct that for what we're doing here in looking at the review, that because of the Dark Knight trilogy, I think a lot of people just assume Wayne Enterprises, and I guess that's partially correct here. But to be specific and accurate, I believe it was the Wayne Foundation and Wayne Financial that was on display in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. All right, continuing on into the review. Stephen writes, quote, "Anyway, Wayne now becomes convinced that Superman is a dangerous lunatic, which is kind of funny considering Batman likes to wear a rubber suit and has started branding captured criminals," unquote. I find it kind of funny that Steven doesn't mention why Batman would consider Superman a, quote, dangerous lunatic, unquote, or why he has started branding captured criminals in the first place, or that Alfred tells us, the viewers, that this is new for Bruce Wayne and Batman. He didn't go around branding captured criminals before. These are new rules. So why have things changed? Why is this new for Bruce Wayne and new for Batman? That maybe warrants some consideration and some thought, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, maybe some analysis of the film and the character. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's not just something that's being done. There's an intentional reason for why Batman is being depicted this way. Stephen also doesn't mention that the branding of criminals comes back at the end. The Batman makes a move to brand Lex Luthor, but doesn't, which shows that he has a change of heart at the end of the film. He's a changed man by the end of the film, and so he's not doing that at the end after he has had an encounter, a life-changing encounter with Superman and Doomsday, and seeing Superman's sacrifice to save the world. So I think it's, I mean, maybe Stephen didn't want to spoil the film. I understand that. But to paint Batman as this terrible, terrible, terrible character, when in the film, there's an entire arc for Bruce Wayne and Batman that actually resolves itself. And then we have the hindsight of seeing Zack Snyder's Justice League and seeing his portrayal continued on in that film, which would have been, if it had come out in 2017 the way it was meant to, we would have seen that Batman had continued to grow, and he was a man of faith in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So maybe I'm just a strange person who's like, I like film arcs and I like character arcs and seeing characters grow and change. Maybe I'm just that weirdo. I don't know, but I think the films do that really well, showing that Bruce Wayne in the DCEU has a character journey and a character arc, and I really like that. All right, continuing on, Stephen writes, quote, "But while Batman's hunting down the Krypton Kid, Alexander Lex Luthor, a spoiled and brilliant brat, played by Hollywood's go-to guy for annoying geniuses, Jesse Eisenberg, is coming up with a plan to kill both of them and wipe out Metropolis. Or maybe Gotham. Who cares anyway at this point?" Unquote. I'll just respond to that after I've sort of gathered myself. Stephen, just so that you know, if you ever see this, which you probably won't, but if you ever do, no Superman fan that I know, and I actually know a lot of them because I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio about Supergirl, and I have since 2015. And through that, I've gotten to know a lot of folks in the Superman podcasting space. And so I have a lot of people who talk about Superman, who study Superman, who read Superman. And nobody I know calls Superman the Krypton Kid. That is not a nickname that anyone calls Superman. Nobody I know calls him that. In fact, if you looked it up, there actually is another DC Comics character named the Krypton Kid. So you're actually using this incorrectly. And it would probably, like you argue about BBS, might confuse people because there actually is a Krypton Kid character in DC Comics. According to Supermanica, Krypton Kid is a Kryptonian teenager whose real name is Zar Al. He is sent to Earth in a time ship by his father, the scientist Zol-Zu, who has been alerted by Jor-El of the impending doom of Krypton and wants his son to retrieve Zelium, which would prevent the uranium core of Krypton from exploding. Upon arriving on Earth, Zar-Al encounters Superboy, who assists him in trying to locate the needed element, but to no avail. Zar-Al later claims to find Zelium hidden under deep layers of ocean ooze, but is only a ruse to keep the Boy of Steel from preventing him from returning home to Krypton to stand by his father's side when the end came. So not only is Krypton Kid a completely different character from Superman, he actually interacts with Superboy, which, if you are familiar with DC Comics, is Superman, but as a teenager, he goes by Superboy. So it's a completely separate character. So Stephen here, maybe not intentionally, uses Krypton Kid here inaccurately and it just confusingly. He's gonna lead some readers astray, I think. So Krypton Kid, a totally separate character. Might have been better to go with maybe the Big Blue Boy Scout, something like that, the Man of Steel. Some other nickname that Superman actually goes by would probably have been a better choice. Stephen here acts like the plot to BVS is difficult to follow. I don't think it is. I think it's actually pretty straightforward for the most part. Yes, Lex Luthor's plan would wipe out Metropolis and Gotham because Doomsday would affect the United States and then inevitably the world if Superman hadn't stopped him. He was an unkillable creature. Also, the Doomsday fight takes place in Gotham. So I hope that clears up maybe some confusion on Stephen's part. Stephen wants me to take him seriously as a film critic because, as we have established, he's been doing this for 30 years. But he writes the words, "Who cares anyway?" in his review. That's unbelievable to me. Who cares? Who cares? Why would you come to my review? Who cares? It's your review. You should make us care about wanting to read your review. That to me is just wild for someone to put that in there. If I was Stephen, I would want to make you care when you came to my review. Maybe not caring about the film, but caring about my analysis and my thoughts on the film. But it seems very flippant here for Stephen to write something like that. I just find it strange that this guy has been writing about entertainment for 30 years and can't find something meaningful to write about when reviewing Dawn of Justice. It's wild to me. Let's see. Let's keep on going. So Stephen writes, quote, "Not me, certainly. He doesn't care. Stephen doesn't care. He's writing this review, but he doesn't care. Not me, certainly, as the film meanders along, playing less like a prequel for the JLA than a greatest hits medley of every superhero movie ever made. A little Dark Knight Rises here, a bit of Batman Begins there, all spiced up with some X-Men topicality. The thing is, none of it convinces. No, not the superhuman creatures in flowing. Oh my gosh, this is not great to read. The thing is, none of it convinces. No, not the superhuman creatures in flowing capes. The mood," unquote. Okay, I'll engage with this. The mood isn't convincing. I think the mood in BVS is perfect given the story. It's a more serious take because it's a more serious story. It's as we have talked about in previous live streams talking about these reviews. This is a film that has 3 funerals and the highest of stakes. Superman dies in this film. The mood is everything it should be. So maybe Stephen here didn't like the mood of BVS, but to say that the mood isn't convincing is strange to me because the mood is correct for the film and the story and the character arcs. Is Stephen claiming that Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is a mix of The Dark Knight Rises, Batman Begins, and X-Men? That's how I read it. If you read it a different way, please let me know. But if so, I'm trying to reason through this on my end as the reader. How is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice like The Dark Knight Rises? Is it because there's a bomb in it? Is it because Batman is in it? Is it because some of it takes place in Gotham City? Is it because there's a character death with the hint of a resurrection? I'm trying to figure out what the connection to The Dark Knight Rises is. Maybe it's because they both draw inspiration from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. It could be that. I don't really know. Stephen didn't explain it. And then there's the Batman Begins reference. Is BVS a little Batman Begins because it shows Bruce Wayne falling through a hole and interacting with bats? That's kind of a very superficial reason to bring Batman Begins into this, because Batman Begins is, of course, a film where Batman begins. It's the beginning of the Batman journey for Bruce Wayne. Here in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, this is 20 years into his career as the Dark Knight. So he's a little more jaded and a little older, and he is maybe not acting like maybe he did when the bats took him to the light. So I think if you're just going to throw in that, oh, he fell down a hole in the bats flew around him, that's all you got to make that Batman Begins comparison? Oh, okay. And also Steven includes X-Men topicality in here in this list of things that BVS is trying to interweave into the story, as if no other superhero or comic book story has ever been topical. X-Men is the only one. X-Men as a franchise is the only one that has ever been topical ever in comic books. So nobody else can do that. Nobody in the DC universe has ever done that, especially Batman. Not a Batman story. There's never been a Batman story that's been topical, except for maybe, I don't know, that one where he has to go through a bunch of landmines. Maybe that one, but no other ones have ever been topical in any kind of way. So only X-Men has done that, according to Stephen. So I think, I mean, there are like slight things that I think these comparisons are warranted in terms of including them in the review, but it's also not fair to BVS as a film, because it's not trying to be those things. It just does things that are similar to those other things. I would agree that some of these nods are in the film. Like I said, the Batman Begins falling down a hole, and a possible homage to Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. There is that. So some of those things are there. I don't think they should be in the review, but but there are those things. And I think maybe you could even reference here, if you wanted to include those things, at least reference that that some of those things are an homage to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, because he is an executive producer in BVS and Zack Snyder is friends with him. You could mention that if you wanted to make these comparisons. Personally, for my taste, I wouldn't have talked about any of that, because I think a film review should be the first frame of the film to the last frame of the credits. And that's all you really should be talking about there if you're going to analyze a film. But if you're going to include that stuff, I guess you might as well talk about Christopher Nolan while you're at it. But like I've talked about many times before, Christopher Nolan was just an executive producer. He was just trying to help this film get made in the best way possible, probably protecting Zack Snyder from Warner Brothers as much as he could. So there is that. Stephen also claims the mood of the film didn't convince him. We've talked about that. I'm not sure what he needed convincing about, but maybe he's going to mention that in the review later on. So maybe if we keep reading, we'll discover what he's talking about. Okay, so Stephen writes, quote, "Look back at your favorite comic book films, and what you'll notice first is their honesty. Christopher Nolan committed to the dark shadows of his Batman pictures. He used the pictures like the old pictures of the 1930s. Oh, Stephen is a man of classic film taste. She's talking about the pictures. Nobody talks like that anymore, but Steven is. He's talking about the pictures, the motion pictures. I feel like I should have a cigar hanging out of my mouth when we're talking about the pictures. He also says the equal rights struggle that's at the heart of the first X-Men film was one Bryan Singer believed in. But although director Zack, without a K, Snyder is a great visualist, all he has here is pretty pictures and giant and confusing action sequences. So unquote. So this is the second time in the review that Stephen is mentioning that he is so confused about Batman v Superman. He doesn't know what's happening, which explains a lot about this review, honestly. I do think it's important to point out that a film critic that has been doing this for 30 years misspelled Zack. Zack Snyder's name is actually spelled with a K in Zack. So I think he got it right for the rest of the review, but ZAC made it in here. So I don't know, maybe a little proofreading would have helped. Maybe a little editing maybe would have helped. Maybe a find and replace maybe could have, I don't know, but I just wanted to point that out. It's amazing to me that these professional film critics think that BVS is just a bunch of pretty pictures. It is that, of course. Every frame in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice is chef's kiss. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. But that's not all it is. There's fantastic dialogue, believable performances, a score that uses themes for the characters and helps guide us through the film. And also, those pretty pictures, don't just dismiss them as pretty pictures. They're also telling the story. Zack Snyder tells the story without having to have any kind of dialogue or exposition, which I think is a pretty great and creative way to do this in terms of filmmaking, because it requires the viewer to find the meaning in what is being shown on screen. It makes it a very immersive experience for the viewer, especially in his opening sequences of his films, which is a trademark for him. He usually does it with visuals and music. And for me, when I watch a Zack Snyder film and I get put in that position, I'm always like trying to figure out what's going on. It makes me interested in the film. It sort of puts me in the story, and I find that a great way to make films, because I'm already like glued in trying to see what you're doing, because if I don't have somebody telling me what's going on, I have to figure out what's going on. So I actually really like that method of filmmaking. I wonder what is confusing to Steven about the action sequences. I don't find them difficult to follow at all. They're actually pretty straightforward in what's happening. I know where everyone is. I know where everything is. I'm able to follow the action and what's happening. I understand what's happening. So I don't know what he's confused about. He doesn't mention specifically what action sequence is confusing. Continuing on, Stephen writes, quote, "Nothing feels very new, and it's not because we get yet another flashback to how young Bruce's parents were killed. The idea of Superman as Jesus, which was already overdone in Man of Steel, gets trotted out again and worked to death, as does the character of the endlessly traumatized Dark Knight," unquote. Nothing feels new? Well, I would argue that maybe Superman not immediately being accepted by the world and is also killed off. He's killed in this film. Neither of those things have happened on the big screen for Superman before. This is the first big screen depiction of Wonder Woman. This is the first meeting of Batman and Superman in a live action feature film. Same could be said about Diana meeting Bruce and Clark. This is the first time, speaking of which, that the DC Trinity has ever appeared on the silver screen together. This is the first time that the Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg have gotten the big screen treatment. Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is a departure from the real estate loving Lex that appeared in previous cinematic portrayals. So I think all of those things are new. Those are new things that have happened. So I don't agree with the comment that nothing feels new. It may not feel new, but it is new. That's a fact. That's the truth. That's the reality of the situation. I'm not surprised that Stephen has negative things to say about, quote, the idea of Superman and as Jesus, unquote. Uh, because, Zack Snyder really, he made that up. He's the first one, who has ever depicted Superman as a Christ figure. He's the first and only one who has ever done it. This is such a Zack Snyder thing for him to do. No, of course that's not true. Superman has been portrayed as Jesus. The idea of Superman as Jesus goes back to even the Christopher Reeve movie. Watch I think it's either the Superman the movie audio commentary or Superman for the Quest for Peace audio commentary that talks about the intentionality behind the the Christian imagery and the Christian ideas behind Superman and his arrival to Earth, and some of the dialogue that backs up that idea. So that was intentional from the writers there. So as far as I know, it goes back as far as Superman the movie. That's what I would point to. Of course, Kal-El, Jor-El, those names have a connection to God in terms of the language. So there is that. Kal-El is son of God. As far as I know, someone correct me if I've gotten that wrong. But that is something that's part of Superman's character. So I'm sorry if Stephen doesn't like that, but it is what it is. Smallville season 1 has Clark crucified on a tree. I'm sorry. That's just what it is. That's what it is. If you don't like it, tough. That's just part of Superman as a character. You're going to see that sometimes because that has been attached to him as a character for at least half of his run in comics and media portrayals, more specifically. So I don't know. I think, Stephen, I'm sure if he's done this for 30 years and he's really given BBS a good shake, he knows everything there is to know about Dawn of Justice. I'm sure all of these things that we've talked about, the Superman as Jesus thing, the passion narrative that goes throughout the film with Superman, the God versus man theme, maybe even down to the horses that play into the book of Revelation. I'm sure 30-year veteran of film criticism, Stephen, has thought about all of this, that he took all of these things into consideration and just determined that they were bad. I'm sure this is not the first time he's hearing about this, me talking about it. I'm sure he got this after his first viewing and when he was writing this review. So I'm sure he understood all of that stuff. And then he said, no, it's bad. No, I don't think he actually knows any of this stuff. I don't think he actually gave it a second thought, and he never gave it a genuine look into the film. So that's my opinion. Maybe he has. I don't know. But according to this review, what I'm reading, I'm not getting any kind of substance from Stephen here. He seems to make the case that a lot of these film critics do, that Zack Snyder's film, BVS, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, doesn't have any substance. But they don't pick up on the substance. There's plenty of substance there. They just don't write about it. And they probably don't write about it because they don't recognize it, which is the sad part. If you gave it a little time, you might catch it there. So there is that. It seemed like Stephen here wants to maybe take a break from Frank Miller. And you know what? I would agree to that, Stephen. I really would. I think that The Dark Knight Returns, we've kind of done it. Maybe sometime in the future, somebody's going to do a very faithful live action depiction of The Dark Knight Returns, and it's going to be great. But I could maybe take a break from Frank Miller myself. Frank Miller is not my favorite, so I would not mind if we took a break from Frank Miller, especially Frank Miller's Batman. Oh, I just don't like him very much, but that's just a personal choice. That's a personal opinion. Okay, continuing on with Stephen's review. He writes, quote, and whenever interest flags, which is often, time for Snyder to suddenly insert another out-of-nowhere nightmare for Batman. Even Superman gets a mad hallucination. But then in an airless and artificial movie like this one, Maybe it's from lack of oxygen, unquote. Oh, wow. Stephen is bringing the zingers in this section. Wow. It's an it is airless because it has a lack of oxygen. Ooh, boom, roasted. Stephen bringing the heat. Okay, so just so that I understand, Stephen has been doing this for 30 years. He's been a film critic reviewing films, talking about films for 30 years. That's 3 decades. That's a long time. And he has somehow completely missed the use of nightmares in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice and why those are important to the story. A user on Tumblr connected those dots to the visions being part of a revenge play. Stephen here didn't, but a user on Tumblr did. So there's that. Shout out to Pulp Cultura on Tumblr for writing such a great analysis of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice as a revenge play. Go check that out if you never have. After this live stream is over, I'll link it in the video description below so people can go check it out because it is just masterful. I made the connection personally that the main characters all have trouble sleeping. That's a recurring thing in Batman v Superman, especially in the extended cut. We get a little more there. These nightmares are all connected to the bigger nightmare with a K that the universe was supposed to get to. It was all leading to that. I would like to think that a film critic who cared about film and genuinely analyzing them would find those connected threads in the characters fascinating. I would think that a reviewer, a film critic would be like, "Ooh, this is kind of interesting. All these characters are dealing with this. What does this mean?" I find that juicy myself. So that's one of my favorite things about the film. But 30-year veteran of film criticism, Stephen here, didn't catch any of that. So if anybody wants to be a film critic or a film reviewer, here's just a pro tip from me, from somebody who's been doing some art criticism for a while now, maybe not as long as Stephen here, but here's my pro tip. If something is repeated in a film, TV show, or book, whatever story you're watching or reading, pay attention to that repetition and just continually ask yourself, why? That's a great question. It's one of my favorite questions when analyzing any story because once you ask the question why, you have to start thinking. You have to try to answer the question for yourself. You might not be able to ask the author or the filmmaker or the TV showrunner. You may not have that opportunity to ask them. So you might have to figure it out for yourself. So then you're putting your own meaning into the story and coming up with your own interpretation and your own analysis. And that's when things get really, really fun. So pay attention to the repetition and ask the question, why? Stephen here clearly did not do that and just dismissed the nightmares as if they had come out of nowhere. Why are there so many Batman nightmares? Why is he having trouble sleeping? Why is he having all these bad dreams? Yeah, ask yourself that question. They're intentionally put in the film like they are. Maybe there's a reason for that. It's funny, though. He almost starts to get something when he talks about the fact that Clark also gets a hallucination with his father. It's disappointing to me that Stephen didn't pay attention to what is actually said in that scene. Jonathan mentions hearing the drowning horses wailing in his sleep. He's having nightmares of his own. Jonathan, Kent is. And Clark asks Jonathan if the nightmares ever stopped. So Clark is having the nightmares as well. I always have headphones issues. My apologies. All right. So continuing on to say that I think it's something that maybe Stephen here should have caught if he was really serious about film analysis and criticism, that he should have connected those dots with the nightmares, especially since Bruce, Clark, and Lois all deal with nightmares and being kept awake by the things that they are dealing with in the film. Three of the main characters deal with this. it's almost as if it's intentional by the screenwriter and the filmmaker. It's almost as if they meant to do that, that all these characters have this in common. Stephen calls BVS a quote, airless and artificial movie, unquote, and I don't even know quite how to respond to it. Uh, Giving it my best shot, I don't think BVS is airless. I think it's completely opposite of that. I find it full of meaning and substance. I think it's a well written story told through some of the best cinematography I've ever seen put to film. And my question is, why would the use of artificial, the word artificial, which according to my go-to dictionary, Merriam-Webster, refers to something being an imitation or a sham. Why would you use the word artificial here if it means imitation or sham? How does that apply to Dawn of Justice? Everything about this film is trying to be as close to reality as possible. It shows how the world would really be divided about Superman. If he had actually shown up on Earth, I think we would have a lot of questions for him and about him. The government would probably get involved. Some humans like Lex and Bruce would probably see Superman as a threat. There's nothing artificial about the story. Maybe if I'm trying to be generous in terms of reading this, maybe Stephen is using artificial to describe the reliance on CGI in a lot of instances. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. So I don't know why he refers to it as such. All right. So continuing on, Stephen writes, quote, yes, both actors look great. Henry Cavill is a real superhero every time he takes off his shirt, and Ben Affleck sports some very distinguished gray at his temples. Given his last year of marital woes and tabloid adventures, maybe it's real. Unquote. I agree with this in that Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck both look great in Batman v Superman, top tier. No rebuttal from me on that point. I do, however, disagree with taking a personal shot at Ben Affleck in this section. Personally, I don't think that has any place in a film review. If I was writing this review, I would just stick to what I saw on screen and not try to bring the lives of the actors into it. That shouldn't play into anything that you think about the film if you're really serious about film criticism and art criticism. And this comment is also dismissing the intentional choice from Ben Affleck to have Bruce Wayne look the way he does in the film. From what I understand, Ben is the one who chose the wig for Bruce Wayne. That's the hair he wanted to have for Bruce. That's what he wanted Bruce to look like. So very intentional choices from the actor. And I think that really plays into Bruce Wayne in BVS being much older, a little more distinguished, having been through some things. So I think the quote distinguished gray is a visual reminder to the audience that Bruce Wayne is older in years. He's been at this Batman thing for a while. It's remarkable to me that these character and acting choices aren't of much interest to this particular critic. For me, I find all of this stuff really interesting to dig into, and especially in terms of the character arcs and the character journeys. And I think it's strange that critics like Steven here don't find any of that at least compelling enough to dig into. He takes this as a superficial critique, a chance to have a superficial critique to lead into a personal swipe at the actor instead of trying to genuinely analyze the character. Then that's so disappointing to me. And this is the end of the review here. Stephen writes, quote, and the introduction of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman adds fresh interest to the proceedings, even if she's only given a few scattered scenes and is late to the finale. She's got backstory. She's got attitude. In fact, she got me wondering what this movie would have been like if she were the star and these guys in capes, her supporting players. And in parentheses, it says she's due to get her own smaller scale film next year in parentheses. But hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Men flying through the air and living in high-tech caves, that's one thing. But a big budget, high-stakes franchise opener built around a strong female character, that's just crazy talk, unquote. Wow, Stephen really landed that. He nailed that landing on this one, really sticking it to people about Wonder Woman. So I guess that's how he wanted to end the review. It just sort of peters off talking about Wonder Woman. So that is the end of Stephen's thoughts here. It is nice and refreshing, though. There's a positive mention about BVS here. I would agree that Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman really does add something fresh to the film, and I think she's great in it. Which is funny to me because if we revisit the subheading of this piece, it mentions that Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman was part of a disappointing trio. Well, how can it be a disappointing trio if she's actually one third of it is great? I don't understand that. And regarding the 2017 Wonder Woman film, I should point out for those maybe who don't know that Zack Snyder was involved in the story for it and even received awards for his contributions. So Zack Snyder says, you're welcome to everybody who did want a Wonder Woman film. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's live stream. If you missed this live, I hope you'll consider sharing your thoughts in the comments section below. If you ever have any questions about when I'll be live, check this YouTube channel, youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I'll be scheduling streams in advance when I'm available. During the summer of 2022, I'll be taking some time off from the live streams for a little bit, but I'll be kind of getting back to it when I am able to. So just wanted to let people know if you don't see the streams or if you see them scheduled for a later time, there's a reason for that. So just check the YouTube channel just to see when I'm available and active. Let's see. If you do have a BVS review that you'd like to share, we talk a lot about reviews that aren't so great here on this YouTube channel, talking about the top critics from Rotten Tomatoes. But if you know of a review that you think is really well written or has some good points to make or has some meaning in it for the viewer, adds value to your experience, please send it to me. And I'd like to share it with everyone else. So you can definitely do that. Comment below and I'll share it in future videos. All right. Well, that is going to do it for me. Thanks to Dennis, who was in the chat sharing some thoughts. And thanks to everybody who will watch this in the future, the people of the future. Thank you for watching. I'm going to let voiceover Rebecca wrap us up. If you would like to see more of these live streams, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. If you'd like to keep in touch with me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at TheDerbyKid and on Vero at DerbyKid. You can hear my thoughts on the CW Supergirl TV series and all things Kara Zor-El over at Supergirl Radio by visiting supergirlradio.com, subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribing to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/DCTVpodcasts. Also, please check out the Justice League Universe podcast for in-depth analysis on the DCEU films, including Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And before I go, I hope that this live stream video series will inspire you to think more critically and thoughtfully about film and storytelling. I'd like to leave you with this quote from C.S. Lewis's book titled An Experiment in Criticism. The truth is not that we need the critics in order to enjoy the authors, but that we need the authors to enjoy the critics. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life.